This is just a quick plug to announce that on the 7th of February, I will be speaking at a webinar for the Italian Strength and Conditioning Society. My topic is leadership and soft skills in high performance sport. The webinar will be hosted at 9 a.m. to 11:30 a.m. GMT +1. You can get access to the webinar through the link in the description. And by taking part of this webinar, you will get 1 educational credit. Hello and welcome back to PA Chalk Up. I'm your host Manny, and today we have Paudie. How are we doing?
Good, Manny. Thanks for having me on.
It's all good. Again, in the lobby we kind of filmed the podcast in itself, but I'm glad to have you on and sort of talk to you about some of the presentations I've seen you deliver. And again, I've been following your stuff for a while, so it's nice to get you on as well.
Pleasure being on here, and obviously a follower of yourself and some of the hosts you've had have been some of the other people you've had on have been phenomenal from a broad range of industry. So yeah, cool to be on here.
For those who perhaps don't know you or your work, if you give them a little background about your pathway through strength and conditioning.
So yeah, I can probably start in reverse. I'm currently living in France, Irish born. Spent 13 years in London, worked with Arsenal Football Club as the lead strength and conditioning coach for the boys academy, from under 9s to under 21s program for 9 years, and then with the Arsenal women for the last 3 years of my time there, obviously which culminated in a Champions League win, which was phenomenal. Prior to that, I was with Irish Rugby for 6 to 8 years, 6 years full-time, 8 years kind of part-time on and off, working with Munster Rugby down in the southern province of Ireland, working with the boys academy, boys schoolboy program, filtering into the men's senior first team program. And during my time with Irish Rugby, I had the opportunity to work with the men's national team at the 2011 World Cup and run the program for the under 20 boys at the Junior World Cup in France. Prior to that, various background in different sports, working in university facilities, the Mardyke Arena in Cork, the Munster University of Technology, where I studied, done my undergrad in sports management, and kind of went around the back door into strength and conditioning by chance, just because I loved weightlifting, loved coaching, done my British weightlifting qualifications, Irish weightlifting qualifications, American Strength and Conditioning Association qualifications, Aussie, UK, sat on the board of the UK Strength and Conditioning Association as well. So kind of mixed, varied bag of education, varied bag of experience. Made a lot of mistakes along the way, all in the thirst for knowledge and understanding. And I was happy to train anyone that was in front of me, whether that was a youth player, senior international, male, female. Just fascinated by human performance and physical performance. That's led me now to, I'm now sitting in a house in the south of France where I live for now, while I set up my own performance company. So watch this space.
Nice. Something that I really like that you said is you've made many mistakes throughout this journey, and you're still learning and still adapting and still willing to make those mistakes as well. I think that's a very important message, specifically because this is, relatively speaking, it's still quite a new industry. So like we're still trying to figure out like what the space looks like, how can we put that little impact in there. So on that, what's something that's currently firing you up in this industry and your thirst to keep exploring new things?
I think we spoke offline about this actually. I think we've never been so inundated with technology, data, AI, search, knowledge. When we spoke earlier, Manny, we spoke about like 20 years ago when I was starting out. You'd get a couple of books here and there, a couple of CD-ROMs with PDF training programs, and you might have someone who visited a club in a different country and come back with their program, and it was just what are the best doing. It was almost like not secretive, but the World Wide Web wasn't spitting out information like it is now. And I think for me, all along, it's been filter through the wheat and find what works for you and what works for your athletes. Make sure that your basics are good. I'm always happy about brilliant basics. Like the basics don't change. What we were doing 60 years ago, say with isometrics, with Easter block athletes using isometrics for varying strength qualities in certain lifts, certain events, now found its way into rehab and robustness. And it's not a new concept. It's just the method has changed, but the principle remains the same. So I think we need to really harp in on make sure our principles are strong, our core values and what we want to achieve is strong, and then obviously the methods and can change, when something new comes out that's worth looking at. What gives me a thirst for more knowledge and more kind of delving into the industry is that I spent 3 years training the female athletes at Arsenal full time and running a program there, and the lack of research, the lack of, I suppose, clear evidence and experience in the female cohort is staggering, that it's way behind men's sport. And I think that's a big scope for practice and giving these female athletes in particular the quality training and experience they deserve. I think there's a huge job to be done there, and I've seen some very good programs and I've seen some very good training of female athletes, but that's an area of real keen interest for me at the moment. And again, with that comes all sorts of problems. The physiology is different, so what are we looking at when we're talking about, when I say problems, I suppose questions to be answered, or how to get the best out of the female athlete is very different than the male athlete. So there's loads of scope for research there we spoke about, but yeah, I have a thirst for just continuing to learn. I'm delving into AI at the moment. It's new to me. In previous roles, I haven't had to build platforms or really be strong in Excel because I had a team of better people than me to do that for me. But now I'm just looking at how it enhances our process as coaches, but without taking from it and without going into rabbit holes of everything looks pretty on paper and then the delivery is poor. So now you can build a presentation in minutes, you can build a website in minutes, but actually what's sitting behind that is very key for me. And maybe that's old school, but yeah, that's where I'm at the moment, really delving into, now starting my own kind of consultation business and stuff. It's looking at and developing new areas of outside of strength and conditioning. I think I have huge experience of building programs and developing the physical qualities of an athlete, but actually there's a lot more to it now in professional sport. The social side of things, the environment. As a head of department previously, how do I build an environment for my team to excel? And I've got that wrong sometimes in previous roles, and I've got it right in other roles. There's a different facets to us now as strength and conditioning coaches, and particularly when you find yourself in lead positions or you find yourself specialising in a position. Do you become a specialist or generalist? So all these questions are in my head at the moment. There's so much noise out there, and how do we cut through the noise to find what actually has value?
100%. I think so. You've touched on it a couple of times, and this AI generation is very interesting but very daunting as well. If you're not really interested, I used to firmly believe that AI was nonsense, and you just can't use AI when you're coaching. Until I read a book, and I was speaking to Thomas Newman, who's a great mentor of mine as well. He uses it heavily, not so much for the physical coaching, but he said this to me and I was like, okay, so it's kind of shifting your perception into it being a coach to it being an assistant. So instead of so you're the head coach, you make all the ultimate decisions, you make all the coaching cues, you make all the real important decisions, but you can have a conversation with AI to make sure that you're optimizing what you're delivering. And again, I've had a conversation with Brian Mann too, actually, on AI and how it's sort of getting put into the field, and it shouldn't be looked as a thing to fear, but you can actually predict a lot better what's going to happen in the performance, or you can identify trends a lot better if you use AI the right way. So Brian Mann was talking about okay, so if we use AI for VBT, we can actually get accurate ranges for whatever specifics they need, depending on the athlete. So right now it's everything's general. We're doing these speeds based on a general model. Okay, now how can we get a bit more specific and have my athletes move at a speed that tailors for their needs? So again, bell curves, there's bell curves for everything. The slower athletes that can produce huge amounts of power, fast athletes who might not produce a lot of power. How can we implement the right speeds to make sure that they're all targeted across a spectrum of levels? That's where I'm finding really fascinating is okay, what trends can I identify? And again, Excel's great because as long as you can download the metrics and the things you're looking for, you can put it onto a ChatGPT or something. Hey, identify trends over the last 6 months on his jump height or his peak power in a squat using the VBT. What trends am I seeing? This is a quick shout out to our main sponsor on this channel, TeamBuilder. TeamBuilder is an all-in-one platform that hosts programs, questionnaires, testing, anything that you may need for your athlete's performance, you can host it in TeamBuildr. TeamBuildr also now has 2 different sides, which is OS and Practice. For more information on TeamBuildr, check out the link in the description. And if you use code PAChalkup all together, you will get a 30-day free trial.
Yeah, I think that's very, very, obviously, I know Brian and I've presented with him, and obviously a huge fan of his research and him as a practitioner slash, athlete himself and
human.
I would agree, and a human, top human. And I had the pleasure of presenting with him years ago at a conference, and I'm sad I only got to spend 10 minutes actually talking to him properly, because I could have picked his brain for hours. But that's really interesting what he's saying there, and it makes a lot of sense. I'm not one for fads, so in the industry, particularly in the last 10 years as it become more popular, I've seen a lot of fads come and go, lots of different tech, lots of different things. So when AI comes along, I was skeptical. I was like, okay, well, it's not going to replace me as a coach. There's a little bit of fear as well of what can it do to maybe enhance or diminish what you're doing. After spending a bit more time on it in the last number of months in particular, and using it for various different things, I'm finding it very useful for helping decision making. It can condense your data, your information into one consolidated summary and actually help you go, okay, that's clear now, I'm on the right path or not. It'll never replace the coach and the coach's delivery or the coach's planning, but it can certainly help in the decision making process. And as you said there, and Brian had pointed out, can it put bandwidths on individual athletes that we can't as coaches have time to do? We don't have time to do this. Some sports scientists don't have time to be driving. This is a question I got all the time in every club I've been at. Like, we want more individualized bandwidths. We want more individualized markers. The GPS settings are set at this. That's not individual, based on their speeds, based on their capacity. And I agree with that. But we don't have time to do that. Whereas AI can probably package that up for us much quicker than we'll ever be able to do on Excel or on Google Sheets or something else. So I think it's to be used sparingly, used with in the right way. I've been in meetings previously in departments where people have been accused of using AI, ChatGPT, etc., to write their notes or to develop a presentation, because the language used is not the language that person would use on a daily basis, or the dialect, or say the structure. And I'm like, well, fair play. Let's use it to our advantage to actually clean things up and make things in a very nice way presentable to our staff, to our coaches. I believe universities at the moment, some universities are talking about going back to handwritten exams, so that so there is the danger and the fear of something moving so fast. For me, embrace it, take what you value from it, but don't become reliant on it.
No, as well, like, I've started hearing like this fear of it replacing and it just becoming, your job becomes obsolete. Like, I always compare it to like when computers came around and the internet came around. Like, there was this massive freak out of like, oh, it's going to replace people's jobs. And to a certain extent, it'll replace some things, but like, there's nothing to stop a young coach now reading and researching everything that they can on AI, and that being a skill that they present to employers. Hey, I'm very proficient at AI. I can make your systems run so much smoothly through XYZ. And like, that's now a key skill. Like, if you're proficient in running data and you can run it in half the time a coach can do it, you're hireable. Like, that is a desirable skill. So it's like, how can we use it to our advantage as well, in the sense of like, okay, I'm a young coach coming into the field. This is what is currently the emerging trend. How can I become good enough with it so that I can present as my skill that only I can do it just now?
I think you're spot on there, Manny. I remember going back 3, 4, 5 years ago, there was this kind of presumption going around performance that our sports scientists in the next 3, 4, 5 years would have to become coders, computer coders, not sports scientists. That they would be building dashboards, building platforms, building Python and all these things, which is another skill set to have. And I know some of my sports scientists that I would have worked in the past, we would have been pushing them into that skill set, thinking we would get ahead of the game. But now AI kind of not diminishes that, but it actually kind of steps into that space. If used properly. It's the fear was that it would replace us as coaches, or it will replace some positions, but I don't think it will. I think it'll only enhance it, as you said. And nowadays, if you're a young coach and you've got a very strong background in strength and conditioning, but you can jump on AI and development of software like that, then you add huge value to. It's not your work; it's how you how do you present. First of all, how do you present your work? Look at trends, and how does those trends, through your performance markers and monitoring, help deliver and develop your program? And if you can do that quicker and cleaner for technical staff and the coaching staff, and for your staff, I think you're on a winner there. I think it's something to be embraced. We gather so much data, and we don't have time to look at it. A lot of times we don't have time to look at it as practitioners. And then we're thinking of new tests for this, and something else pops in, and now we need to assess this. And now suddenly we're so much noise. Where do we get time to cut through the noise in a clean, efficient way? And as you said, like Brian had mentioned with the VBT, show trends, show benchmarks, show ups and downs in that program. I think that's of huge value.
100%. I don't know how much I can say about this, but I've watched a coach use AI in a way that he essentially taught everything he knows. He inputted the research articles that he uses and he goes back to. And I watched this AI bot program on his software what he wanted it to be done, and then it just transferred over to the athlete's account. It was insane, but like within a couple commands, he had a whole block done for his athlete. It was insane. Like, it's, again, the decisions are ultimately his, but it's like it's that easy to do.
And that's what I mean by cleaning up our processes.
Yeah.
Like when I was working with the under 21s boys, I had 27 players to program for, 27 individuals as an individual. It was me and another guy, another practitioner. There was often times it was just me. And how do you program and plan cleanly? Across the season for those 27 athletes, and it took a lot of man hours, making sure the individual athlete was looking through the monitoring data, looking through their screening data, testing data, GPS data, making sure that what I was delivering was the highest level for that young athlete, and that was 27 of them. So if we can clean that up, well then, wow.
100%. With the sort of experiences that you've had and everything leading up until now, how are you transferring that over to your new consultation business, and how is that all sort of panning out?
Yeah, I suppose there's going to be a couple of sides to the business that I can't really share yet. I'm hoping to launch at the end of January. A big part of my kind of new mindset is I've been in the weeds of performance for 25 years. It's taken its toll on my personal life with regards to time off and holidays and different things. So I'm looking for a little bit more balance, and I'm looking at how can what I've learned over the last 25 years and what I've delivered help continue to develop the community I'm working in, because I really enjoy giving back to the performance community. Hence I do podcasts and I do conferences, and I try to share my experiences and my work in an authentic way. And how that's transferring across is, it's really made me sit back and look at, as practitioners, when you're knees deep in a program every day and in a going from game to game, event to event, trying to peak and succeed and taper and recover, you don't often get to look out. And I've had a lot of time to look out and really look at my strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats from the last 25 years. And a big part of that is I love coaching coaches and helping mentor and develop coaches. So I think that'll be a lot of what I will be carrying into my new domain. I didn't realise how many coaches I would have probably not had an impact on, but certainly had very good conversations with along the way to help them, and they've helped me. And I think that's something that's really interesting to me, is giving back to the community there and help develop the next cohort of top coaches.
100%. So I always love this conversation because we're in a unique position where I think with social media and how everything goes, we have a lot more influence than we can sometimes imagine. Like it always goes to that question of like, how can you ensure you're always putting out the right content for a broad spectrum and get your message clear, that you kind of need to individualize truly. You have to consider every aspect of this industry. How have you sort of found managing like what to say to who and how that conversation goes around?
That's a very interesting topic, and very poignant, because obviously I'm on social media right now. I'm on a podcast, expressing my work, my background, my potential business. It's a really tricky one. one of my mentors, Liam Hennessy from Irish Rugby, many years ago said that at the time we were building, for instance, a schools program where we were doing videos of exercises that we could give to young players to do at home, and technique and stretching and different things so that they could practice stuff at home when they're not with us, because we only had touch points with them a couple of times a year. And Liam always said to me, and it rings true to this day, that whatever you're putting out there needs to be clean and accurate and look appropriate, as in the technique needs to be clean, the background, everything needs to look clean if you're putting content online. And I think that rings true also for any statements you make online. And I'll give you an example of this. I presented at a Child Champion conference many years ago with James Baker, and my topic was Olympic weightlifting and how we deliver that to young athletes. Joe Eisenman was in the crowd, who's a world-renowned practitioner and expert in the area of LTAD, and he just asked me, Paudie, when would you start teaching young boys and girls in your program Olympic weightlifting? And I was like, well, we're teaching movements from under 9. We're teaching overhead squats with a broomstick as part of their physical literacy. We're teaching lunges as part of their physical literacy, etc., etc. So someone in the audience put out on Twitter that at Arsenal they start teaching Olympic lifting at under 9, and I got absolutely berated. By saying, okay, I got hammered by loads of people going, this is ridiculous, why are you specialising at under 9? These are footballers, they should be doing more Jeremy Frisch type animal movements and fundamental movement skills, and it was just misstrued. It was completely misstrued and so that wasn't me putting that out there. I'm just giving you an example of how it can go badly wrong. I've seen many times people get into arguments about methods and stuff online. Online is, for me, social media for me is sharing good information. I'll rarely tag or post anything unless it's something that I believe in. If it's a paper I like, or I've seen something someone has published, or a podcast I like, then I will, and I know that person's work is authentic, legit, and of a high level. So you have to be very careful what you put out there. And I see more and more young coaches now putting up warm-ups, putting up mobility exercises, videoing themselves. That's fine. That's where the industry is to get business sometimes, but I think you need to be very careful. I've seen lots of top coaches get drawn into serious conversations. And remember, every text or any email or any post, there's no context in the text. So you have to be very careful of context in the text. So it's that person wasn't wrong. Tonality, and 100%. Yeah. I'm not sure if that answers your question, Manny, but it's a very...
No, it does, because...
And in the modern world, we have to be online. You have to have a presence now. And obviously, if you're with a big club, you can't have a very strong presence due to GDPR and data protection and athlete protection. Completely understand that, but... it's also what you share and how you share it is very important, because also you could be inspiring young coaches, you could be inspiring young athletes who could be hanging on every word you say or anything you post, and if it's not up to scratch, you have to be very careful how that's used then.
100%. And I think I've unfortunately also had a similar experience where I guess was speaking about something and it got kind of misconstrued, and again, the person that had a strong opinion against it isn't technically on the field. They're in the space but not in the field. So it's kind of like, okay, my message does matter, so I need to sort of make sure that people know that, okay, this actually does get listened to. Is it true and authentic? And as well, that it kind of brings up my job of I need to always make sure that my coaches are legit. I also, and the thing is, I love when coaches, kind of mentioned it in the lobby, but because I have such variety of coaches and their methodologies and their experience and everything else, how do I make sure that there's something in there that people can extrapolate from their message? And it's, again, I always look at their social media. If they're posting or if they're not posting, I have a conversation with them and be like, okay, tell me your process. If it might not make sense to me, but if it at least provides results and I can see physically the way that they've went about things, I'm like, yeah, that's a good conversation, because it might not be what I like, but it gets results. It's research based, so I'm like, yeah, let's go, because we are in an era where social media is important. The message that you're conveying is kind of a true representation of yourself. And again, I've seen coaches go off the deep end on this, where they're so about that one specific niche thing that they'll die on that hill. But in the background, I'll ask them and they're like, nah, well, that's just something I say, but I do that too. And I'm just like, yeah.
I know one particular coach online who just loves being controversial. Just loves being. That's their thing. That's their thing, and they particularly when it comes to education side of things, they love just And I'm going, that's their thing. I don't know what you get from that personally. I try and, as a practitioner, as a person, I try and take all views on board, then make my own decisions, whether that's right or wrong for me, or right or wrong for my athletes. I'll live and die by that if I get it wrong, and I've got it wrong in the past in different ways. With regards to what you should study or where you should study or what you should do or what methods you should use, that's down to you as a practitioner. And I will have strong views in how I would do things, but I don't dismiss anyone else's views because there's 100 ways to get to the same point. But I know there is certain practitioners out there who just love to be controversial and throw bombshells out there to get likes and reactions. And one, I'm going, what's the benefit here? And two, those that are liking it and responding to it, if it's wrong or if it's really, really out there, then what's their agenda? Just concentrate on getting your programs right for me.
I think we might actually be talking about the same coach. On something that we were talking about in the lobby, it was that female athlete research and how that, like, your experience over the time you've seen it develop or not develop. What are your main takes away from like coaching female athletes and how we could potentially be doing a better job as strength and conditioning coaches or human performance coaching?
So that's it's a really hot topic, and I've only presented recently at 2 different conferences on the rise of women's sport and the impact it's having on us as professionals on the ground. Obviously, I spent 3 years with the Arsenal women, and going into that job, people in the club were even going, okay, you know, you've spent a lot of time with the men, what's the experience of the women? And I've got fairly strong experience with a female athlete in the past before joining Arsenal with Irish rugby, Irish hockey. My female athletes in the university job I had. What's interesting, Manny, is that what I was doing with them are the challenges I saw those female athletes face 15 years ago, which was access to facilities, access to funding, still goes on now in a lot of ways. In a lot of clubs, in smaller sports, individual sports in particular, I think there's a huge niche and a huge crying out of support for individual female athletes. A lot of the team sport athletes now are getting a lot more traction with regards to support from sports science, sports medicine. And certainly in my time at Arsenal, the department, our sports science medicine department, grew exponentially over 3 years, which was brilliant vision from the club to promote and protect and develop the female players within the club, because essentially they're assets to the club. As practitioners, my one takeaway would be, we mentioned it in our breakout chat beforehand, the female athlete's not a small man. That's the same as training a young player, whether it's a male or female, boy or girl. They're not a young adult. So the game is the same, the physiology is different, and that's where you really have to look at the differences. The difference for me between the strongest thing I've learned between the difference between male and female athletes is engagement and psychosocial aspects of the program. You really get a lot more questions from the female athlete about why we do what we do, how is this going to work for her to develop her, the process behind her thought of putting this into the plan, and their engagement is phenomenal once you bring them on the journey of the program. Not saying men don't go on the journey of the program, but men have been used to probably access to formalised strength and conditioning, whether it's in sport or in amateur sport, for a lot longer. So it's not a new thing to them. Whereas within the female game right now, and the female sporting space, performance coaching, psychology, strength and conditioning, nutrition is very new to a lot of these particularly young female athletes, but female athletes in general. Very strong relationship with a top international athlete back in Ireland who's retired, and it was only in her last 2 years of her career where she actually had a strength program. She was European champion at the time in her discipline, and it wasn't there. And now suddenly you're throwing something new on a very experienced athlete. So that's the key difference for me is access for female athletes now is gaining a lot of traction. Access to facilities, services, programs, practitioners. The difference is you might have a top female international football player with a training age in a strength and conditioning setting of 1 or 2 years. So your program has to be tailored for the individual, like it always should be. Don't think because they're a top international player that they're a top international weightlifter or athlete. They're not. They could be, but move very slowly. It's all very new. And then, honestly, some of the best athletes I've worked with are female athletes. Their engagement and buy-in to the program is phenomenal. once they understand that they're part of the process. Particularly as a male coach as well, coming into the female space. It's another that could be another topic of conversation. Yeah, my guideline would be there is to get buy-in from your athlete with the program, bring them on the journey with you. They're not a small man. They're very individual, and just take into account their training history, training age, not the level they play at or compete at, and then build from there. Would be my
100%. I think as well, it's a good point that you bring up about the resources that they're available to them. Like I know in Scotland, field hockey for women's, handball for women's, at the Scottish level where they're now international and they're going to different competitions and different tournaments, they have to fund their own travel. They have to fund their own training. They have to fund their own equipment. Like, it's ludicrous that that's still a thing. Like, they're not getting resources to at least even compete for their country, it's nuts. And that's not involving like the trainings and the whatnot. It's quite brutal how they still have to fund their own things. And on that, you've mentioned that only the last 2 years of their performance they got exposed to strength and conditioning. And then we as practitioners love to talk about training age. Like that would have been 2 years training age for that specific athlete. And something I see more and more on social media is like these elite level exposures to different training stimuluses like chains, like specialized eccentric equipment. And it's like, do they need that at that point, or can a normal GPP program work best for them?
And that my answer to that would be train the athlete in front of you. And I think, yes, I would agree with you on that. And that by the way, this isn't just solely for the female athlete. You might have a male athlete,
100%.
a male player. You might have a male player who has been the top player in Europe somewhere. He signs for your club. He's 28, but he's never had an actual formalised plan or anything related to the work you do in your club. So then that for me is, keep it simple, keep it basic. If they're top players, they're generally good athletes, generally, right? So I'm not saying that that person who only had 2 years of S&C or performance support at the end of her career was a bad trainer. No. She might have done things really well, but off her own back, or like cookie cutter programs off the line or on from the internet or from a coach of a coach of a coach or a friend of a friend. It's not that. And what I found is with a low training age, with a older or higher level athlete, they adapt very quick, very, very quick. And you can move them on very quick. Now, I'm not saying that's the difference between success or failure either as an athlete. I had an interesting point that actually I presented at a conference on this, is that one of our young females made her debut at 17 last year in the Women's Super League, and she had a training age, I would say, of 2. Keep it simple with the low training age female athlete to start, and they will progress very quick. They usually do, because they're top players for a reason.
Mm-hmm. I think as well, again, not to rag on males, but they're a bit more receptive to what we're saying, and they trust that a little bit quicker than men will, which is also a very interesting differences between coaching males and females.
And it's 100%. And it's also, when we talk about experience and access, and how many 14, 15-year-old girls will you see going in if you go into your local gym now to go and do a workout, how many 14, 15-year-old girls are in there doing weight training or doing some sort of strength work, whether that's single leg balance work or even machine weights or anything to do with resembling what we would consider strength or GPP? Very little. So it's more culturally the men at 13, 14, the boys will want to go in, and whether that's for aesthetics or for, because they know the top players in their sports do it. So it's all about empowering. My whole thing when I was with I had 15 years ago, I was doing Olympic lifting, powerlifting, strength type training with Irish hockey, with Irish rugby girls, the Munster rugby girls, with my athletes, my female athletes. And it was empowering to see them get strong. I was the weird one in the gym, like they were coming in expecting to do like balance stuff and flexibility. No, we were doing strength training for their sport based around their needs, built up over time. I see that now a lot on social media with top female athletes putting their workouts up there. And I think that's very cool that they're going to inspire the younger female to get in the gym. And it's not, sorry, when I say the gym, what I mean by strength training, and strength training can be a push-up. It doesn't have to be, but what I'm saying is that formalised, getting in there, making it a cool space for that young female to feel, safe and feel that, okay, I'm in the gym here. And I've had such success with that in the future. We've had some young academy girls train with us with Arsenal this season. And I remember I was teaching one of them a certain exercise. And I remember one of the men's staff walked past this young girl and went, your technique is really good there, really, really good. And she lit up, boom. She was like, it wasn't heavy, it wasn't, it was good technique, really good form, committed to the second. And you could see in a second the empowerment that gave her, that kind of like, okay, this is cool to do this. This is going to help me better on the pitch. This then buys into the program. So I think, I know we've gone off on a tangent, I think we could do a lot as practitioners to help empower females to get into that space and make it feel comfortable, feel normal. Because for a lot of sports, it still isn't. And, so there's a huge scope for practice there.
I think it's important to highlight as well, and I don't think it's a tangent. I actually love when coaches go off on their own conversations because it gives you different pieces of that puzzle. So that female probably had a better training session on the pitch after that too, because she's still running those highs of like, yeah, I'm the shit. And then like I also think like there's a great technique you can do where it's like if they're demonstrating real solid technique, use them as a demo in front of their whole class. And like that just like skyrockets that even more because like, okay, he thinks I'm good enough to demonstrate to everyone else.
That's huge. Yeah, I use that a lot with the boys actually because I was training young, cool footballers, young, talented footballers who probably didn't think they needed strength training. And I wasn't pushing strength and conditioning on everyone. It's not for everyone, but we saw the benefit of it from an injury prevention point of view. We were reducing growth-related injuries in Arsenal Academy by just monitoring growth to maturation, but also training loads. But more importantly, delivering stability, mobility, strength-based programs when needed. And I used to use a kind of a peer review system, as you said, because a lot of the boys might not want to do it. They might not want to be seen as maybe being weak in the gym because they're not good at it. But through their peers getting better and actually seeing that their testing was getting better and the performance markers were getting better, suddenly buy-in was becoming fairly steady. It became normal and it became part of their program. And the boy who was reluctant or maybe didn't see value in it was now seeing value in it. And I think the same with the female athlete, that young girl, like it was a male coach who works with the men's team, just walked past unprompted by me. It was just, he was going, ooh, that's very good, well done. That, not saying she didn't believe me saying it was very good. It was just that extra little bit of it was peer review. It's peer appraisal, if that's the word. And that might be one of our top women's players saying to that young girl, you've done really well today. That's got huge weight. So we need to encourage that more. And there is the old adage, Manny, that a female athlete needs to feel good to perform. A male athlete needs to perform to feel good. I would sit on that. I would see a lot of that in training and performance in games. I would see a lot of that actually. Yeah. Another
thing that you've kind of touched on and off about, and it's another presentation that it was a sort of roundtable discussion at the UKSCA event, and it's on the growth and maturation and some of the bio-banding that's now coming into play. Can you sort of walk through your experience and how you've saw that developed over the years?
So when we started when Des Ryan formed our department back in 2012, 2013, and I came on board, we were only starting to look at growth and maturation, and Des saw it as a key niche for developing our program. It was colleagues of ours who actually developed our spreadsheets and plans there to look at growth and maturation and assess it using various different methods that were out there, Camish Roche, the mirror wall formulas. And all of what it done for us, Manny, was initially showed us where are these boys in their stage of growth. Because when we arrived first, it was part of the EPPP, the Elite Player Performance Plan that the Premier League were putting in place, which included a longitudinal growth and maturation study they were running. And it all kind of fell into place that it was something we hadn't been exposed to before with regards to the detail of where are they in their stages of growth, are they in the middle of peak height velocity coming through it or out the other end, and what impact that has on their bodies. And I think it was singly one of the best pieces of work that we put in place, and Des drove this very strongly, and it informed lots of good education and conversations with coaches and parents about training loads and different things. Because at the time we were getting Sever's disease, we were getting Pars defects in the back, Osgood Schlatters, that were keeping boys out for ages and ages. Sore tendons, sore knees, sore athletes, angry athletes, not being able to play football. But what we were able to do was, over time, use the information we had and share it with parents and coaches and inform conversations about, okay, these 10 players are in the middle of their big growth spurt in this age group. We've assessed this through our data. Let's just be aware that we might keep training a little bit lighter for a couple of days, or we reduce our content, or we just keep an eye on the boys, and it might be a simple verbal conversation. How are you today? You're going through your growth spurt. I've noticed you're a little bit tired today, or not. It doesn't affect everyone. That was the kind of the first tip point of that for us. And then that led into, obviously, the Premier League driving biobanding, particularly because we didn't want the early developing, early born players passing out the late developers and we've had many late developers come through our system who weren't for us at Arsenal and who are now playing a top flight football. And it's a topic we could talk forever. And lots of clubs got involved in biobanding tournaments, and Dr. Sean Cummings in the University of Bath was at the forefront of the education around this. And Arsenal under Perry Stewart was who's now he's the head of performance for the academy now, and I know they've been involved in lots of biobanding games and information around that. Still haven't got it right. It's a difficult one to implement, because you're looking at an older boy or girl training and playing with a younger boy or girl in an age group below or two below, because physically that's where they're available or ready. So or the opposite. You've got a younger boy who's playing up and constantly plays up because he's physically ready, but then he gets to a point where he's caught up physically with the other boys and he's now not playing up. So there's a lot of psychosocial aspects around this as well. And I know English rugby have tried to implement it. Other sports in New Zealand rugby have tried to implement it, so that you're not losing that late developer. So yeah, I hadn't been too much involved in actually biobanding tournaments or games before I left the boys' academy, but certainly that's the way it was going, and there was a lot of traction around it across the Premier League and European clubs as well. And they're talking about actually a European kind of underage tournament next year in it. I know they're looking at that right now. So,
with considering the late developer, what were some things that you were trying to implement with those groups to make sure that when they did fully mature to that age group, they were ready to play with their peers?
Yeah, that the late developer is an interesting one, and a few have slipped through our net, not because of lack of data or whatever. It just maybe at the time they weren't playing well enough for. Essentially, football in particular is a brutal business. You have to chop squads at every age group, and you do lose some late developers along the way. You also lose some early developers. Sometimes the early developer doesn't move very well. They don't grow into their body or find their movement skills or capacity until later. They might have went up in height and went up in weight and looked the part, but actually, so it works both ways. It's not just a big guy or girl boshing the smaller guy or girl on the pitch. It can work both ways. We tried to be individualised, or group our players as much as possible. The late developer, give them the chance of developing movement skills, a little bit of strength, give them the opportunity to be very good at movements they're good at. And all along, our message to the coaching staff, technical staff, was, are they good players? Full stop. We tried to be an academy that wasn't basing success on size, weight, speed, power. Obviously, that's needed to play in the Premier League, but we were saying, okay, are they good players? If they're technically not good enough, or you don't think they can be, that's a different conversation. But let's not look at their movement skills at 13, 14 and say they won't be good athletes, because they're still growing. That could change quickly. And that was always our message, was trying to educate coaching staff, players and ourselves. It's easy. It would have been easy for me to put on presentations our best, strongest athlete at under 15, 16, but that's not the true picture. That's not the true picture. You take a group of under 14 boys who are generally in the middle of all their growth spurts. You could have one boy who's 42 kilos and 10 centimetres smaller than the middle of the group or the top of the group. So am I giving him a fair shot? You have to give him a fair shot. Does he move well? Is he applying himself to his programme? Is he trying to get better? Yes. Then you work with that player the same as you would with the early developer, who can do all the big exercises you ask him. So that's the approach we took. It was a nurturing, holistic approach, really, while trying to educate all the staff around you that, okay, first and foremost, are they good at their sport or event? And then let's judge them later on.
Question that sort of just came into my mind just now is, with the variety of levels that sort of can come through the door, how are you making sure that, one, everyone's getting the stimulus that they need, and how adaptive is that on a day-to-day, week-to-week, month-to-month program?
So that's always going to be, whatever level you work at, whatever group you work with, that's always going to be the case. I think that exact scenario. we would always do some sort of screening with any player we have, whether it's movement screening, functional screening, some low level force velocity screening, jump testing, etc. when the opportunity arises within the program. And then my thing with the young athletes and with a new athlete coming into a program is always that I'm not measuring you right now against your position in the squad or your mate. I'm looking at what you look like and where the gaps are needed for your physical development. And then from there we would build a program. And usually my programs with the younger players would have, with the top players we worked in 6-week blocks just because that kind of worked around fixtures. With the younger players, because you play on a Saturday or a Sunday or you might have a midweek cup game, I generally would work in 8-week blocks. Because for me it would take 1 to 2 weeks for a young player to get familiar with the program. Then you've got 4, 5, 6 weeks of developing that program, and then before you look at it and change it. And when I say look at it and change it, it might be subtle changes within type of exercise or stimulus of variety of a new type of exercise. So the process would have been very linear for the young players. But within that, day to day, week to week, we would be checking in with the athlete. And that young athlete might come into you and might have played a game of basketball in school. They're tired. They're meant to do a strength session with you tonight. My priority is that they play football or whatever event I'm working with. They're on the pitch for football and they feel good in football. So I might pare back their prep work or I might pare back their gym work that night based on how they're feeling that day. And that for me should be the case for every athlete, young, old, male or female, is that you train what's in front of you, and a plan is great, but you're dealing with human beings. We're not dealing with machines where you turn the key on and it goes. So we have to be very aware of, particularly with some of the older female athletes and older male athletes I would have worked with, when they're getting on into heavy fixture congestions and I'm planning a strength block or I'm planning some power development because now we don't have, we have a chance to get some work in. They might come in and tendons, ligaments, or just body is sore, it's tired, it's like screaming out for a bit of recovery. Now, do I drop more load on that to try and get my piece of flesh, or do I go, okay, what minimal dose can I give this player right now to maintain what we need to maintain while they get a little bit extra recovery or mental recovery? We mustn't forget the mental side of strength and conditioning either. Formalised plan. They're getting a formalised plan for the whole season. So within that, I think one of the biggest, within my programming, young and old, I think variety is key. But not just, it's one of the training variables that gets lost along the way. Not variety for the sake of being cool or being or stimulating their minds. Just a variety within, change it up. One day it might be, for instance, late in to the season when I was getting boys ready to move into full-time a professional program, we would have done a lot of steady, progressive, linear strength and conditioning across the season. The last month before we go into holidays and do their off-season plan, we might throw in a lot more fun games, a lot more football individual work, just to give them that stimulus outside of your formalised plan. So there is a really key for variety, particularly in the season when things are tired and you're tough. And we went back to, and we spoke about coaching tone as well there in our conversation offline. For me, your coaching tone needs to change across your program, across the season as well. It really does. I think that strong kind of governant, dominant coaching style in the pre-season where you're trying to put players into a really tough physical state to get adaptation, that kind of needs to change when you're into 2-3 games a week in the middle of winter and there's ice on the pitch. I think that's something practitioners forget about, is tone within your program. You're not just planning your program, you're planning how you deliver it as well.
This is one of my favorite stories from when I was out in the University of Washington. We were doing I think it was testing for the NFL Combine, and one of the players, again, I had enough trust with this player that he knew I was joking around, and he hit a massive PR. Now, he doesn't necessarily have to be strong or powerful for his position, but he still has to keep up with everything. But he was a phenomenal athlete, and he was very strong. He was very powerful. So he got hyped after a big PR, and he was like, "Did you see that?" And I got up in my face and was like, "Did you see that? I did that." And I was like, "Is that it? My granny could have done that and she's dead." And he was like, "Oh, coach, that's fucked up."
You knocked the wind out of him.
But I think it's always good to have that sort of camaraderie as well. And when we're talking about tone, yes, there's elements that we 100% need to be serious about. And again, like you said, if we're in pre-season, it's going to suck. They just have to keep going. And again, your tone will be like, "Yay, guys, it's getting tough, but like let's power through. But like in the 1-to-1, you can sort of have a laugh with a couple of them and be like, hey, it's do or die, so let's go.
Yeah, and that's actually, we could talk about for hours about this. Like, tone for me is so important, and I've got it wrong many times. I remember when I was at Munster Rugby with the academy boys, who were like top boys. They were big, powerful athletes, and I looking back, I hammered them. Sometimes in the wrong way. Obviously, a lot of them had success off the program, but I remember I had one boy, probably, when I say boy, he was 2021, he was in the academy a while at schoolboys program, going on to be a professional, and we were like that, big PRs in the gym, power cleans, back squats, like we were testing in pre-season and screaming and getting up for it, and I was the loudest little guy in the room, and I remember, if a boy was going for a new big lift, like, we'd almost have not silence in the gym, but most people would stop training and wait for this to happen. Yeah, I remember one boy come up to me after, I had him 3 or 4 years on and off, and he's come up to me going, I bloody hate when you shout at me, when you start giving me cues in the middle of a big lift, just leave me do it. And I was like, okay, well, I didn't know that, and now I do. And my tone then changed for him. And the tone changes in your session for individuals as well. Someone, as you said, can take a little joke. Even after I left the boys program, they train in the same facilities as the girls, as the women, and they might be doing a bit of gym, and I might walk past a boy I had a long time going, poof, are you still on that weight? You were doing that 2 years ago. And it's no slight on the coach who's coaching them or the athlete. It's just having that little feel with the boys going, come on, like, what are you doing? Come on, you're better than that. Yeah, it's a sensitive one. It's a sensitive one, but yeah, coaching tone is huge for me. Yeah, and I've got it wrong many times, thinking I knew what's best.
I think that's what's important. I think that's what's key, is like knowing when. And again, I think one of the first industry books I read was Conscious Coaching by Bert Bartholomew, and like I from there was like, okay, who do I have in the gym? Who can I have a laugh with, and who do I have to be a little bit more serious for? And like I have 100% gone this wrong too, but it's like it's that learning. Okay, I thought he was this, but actually I need to change up a little bit because it's not 100% to match it. So it's a very interesting role that we have, because like we obviously need to actually I'll tell you the story. So I had a sports psychologist on, and we were talking about like motivation, goal setting, growth versus fixed mindset isn't linear. Like, it's fluctuational. So when we have athletes come in, we kind of need to be like a dimmer switch. Like, so it's either full on or they're low. So we kind of need to match our athletes' energy depending on how they come in. If they come in low, we need to start low and start rising that dimmer up to get them hyped. Or vice versa. If they come in too hot, okay, like we need to dial this down a little bit so we can be serious for this session. And like that was a brilliant example of like, okay, we actually just need to figure out what we have in the gym and coach to that.
Yeah, I really like that. I really like that analogy. To lean on that, exactly on the topic we're talking about, one of the best coaches I have ever worked with sees themselves as a psychologist. Now, they work with a psychologist. For me, whoever's, and when I say the coach, whether it's an S&C coach or a technical coach, whoever's in charge of that session sets the tone. Mm-hmm. Whether it's me taking a gym session or one of my colleagues taking a warm-up or the head coach taking this part of the technical session, they set the tone. And it's so important. As you said, you want it hot or you want it cold or you want it somewhere in the middle. And that balance, that's the craft of coaching. Mm-hmm. I don't like to use the word the art of coaching, because art can be anything. Art can be scribbles on a wall, or it can be a beautiful sculpture. I think it's called the craft of coaching. For me, is a better word. Like, that is the craft of coaching, is knowing the audience right now. And some of the best on-pitch coaches I've worked with, we'd have planned a session within an inch of its life. And he would say in the middle of the session, going, "Buddy, these boys are on it today, on it. And we're meant to be backing off a little bit." And he'd go, "Is there wiggle room this week to back off somewhere else? Because this is running really well. I want this to continue. I'm getting loads of good work done here." And that's where you go, okay, back off later in the week, adjust. Because in that moment right now, it's going really well. Or the opposite. This is absolutely crap. They're not getting this drill. I need to spend more time with this drill, so I'm parking the other two drills. We're scrapping the end of the session. We're staying at this until we get it right. And I think that's, I used the term once in an interview. I was going for an interview for a job, and I probably shot me in the foot. They were asking me, what's my periodization model? And I was called it the mood periodization model. I was like, my athletes come in at different levels. I'll take my rugby academy boys for, They were all in university, training with Munster Rugby, being paid by Munster Rugby as academy players. Played for a club on a Sunday, could have played on a Saturday, probably played for the university in the middle of the week. I have them in at 7 a.m. in the morning and hammering them with heavy power cleans, heavy back squats. There was times I adjusted it. I would go, okay, this guy is moving really well today. We might just push him a bit more today because I know later in the week he's got a game we won't be able to. Or he's feeling absolute crap today because he's got beaten up on the pitch yesterday. And I'm expecting him to do 5 sets of this, 5 sets of that, 5 sets. So that's where I called it mood periodization. So based on the mood at the time, I might adjust things. Now, I think the person in the interview, I didn't get the job, thought that was my philosophy for all my periodization. I was trying to make light of how I adjust things day to day, basically, based on tone and based on mood. So that's a phrase you can coin and sell out there, mood periodization.
So, but I think that is what our job description is. Whether they people want to subscribe to specific methodology or periodization models. Like, how many times have you set up this brilliantly looking program? Your athletes come into the session, it's just not happening. Like, do you keep hammering them, or do you just, hey, fuck it, guys, let's do something fun? Brett Larson's the best one for this. Like, all his warm-ups, most of his training, it's just games. Like, how can I make sure that they're having fun and training? Because, like, training sucks. No one actively likes to push themselves in the gym. But how can we make it more fun so that they can enjoy their sport for longer? And I think that's what our job is it's not necessarily like, how can I get the best out of you right now? Is how can I get the most out of you, or how can you get the most out of yourself for a longer period of time?
Yeah, that's a huge task as a performance coach. Because you have your plan, and you want to deliver your plan, and you have your method, and you have your exercise. And as you say, sometimes that goes out the window. That's a big mistake, actually. Caveat to that. A big mistake I see some young practitioners making is, and this is across not just strength and conditioning, like coaching, technical coaching, whatever you're doing. They put on a drill expecting the drill to do the job. Let's go through the drill. I've got all these bits in it. That drill should come out with this outcome at the end. And then you're looking at the drill, and the drill is falling apart because of technical proficiency, adherence to the drill, timing of the drill, space of the drill. And that's where you have to adapt. And that's where, I've had it a few times with players coming in, big session plan, and we're going, okay, this is not happening today. This is just not working for whatever reason. So how can we make the most of this? And I would have done a lot of that, actually. I would have built that kind of variance into my programs late in the season. So late into a season, coming into the end of the season. Now, it depends really on where we're sitting in a table or a cup competition as well. Obviously, you have work to get done as well. But like in the gym-based sessions, I would say, okay, we need to do this, this, and this. But at the end, you've got 10 minutes to do whatever you want to do yourself. Some young players might want to do extra conditioning because they're going on holidays and they want to look sharp. Some might want to do just sit and do some foam rolling, stretching. More often than not, they wanted to do beach weights, and this is the young males as an example. And I would then help them plan that. Like, I wouldn't take away from it. I go, okay, well, you've listened to what I want to do. You've done what I wanted to do the whole season, or for this block of time. So now it's just a little bit of feedback from you and give you a little bit of what you want to do. Mm-hmm. I had it with some top players, seasoned players, who would come in the morning and jump on the cross trainer for 20 minutes, half an hour before breakfast. And I had other coaches going, well, that's killing their performance on the pitch later. And I'm going, is it? And then I go to those players and I go, okay, well, I've been asked a question why you're doing this before breakfast in the morning. Is it fat burning? Is it conditioning? Is it, I can help you plan this. Those players that go, we just like sitting, we're in early, I get in from traffic. I like to sit here, it's good for my tendons, it makes my knees feel good before I do the prep work later. I'm going, I can't argue with that. Like, they're seasoned players, they know their body. It's not adding fatigue later on. It's understanding where to put that variety in and yeah. And then the ownership of the program. I think as practitioners, we've got into the mindset, rightly or wrongly, of putting a ceiling on players and going, okay, you're running too fast or you're doing too much. And that's where, as young practitioners and as practitioners, just as a kind of a be aware of this going forward, if you're going into the industry, that we get known as the time police. We get known as, we're not allowed to go put athletes into the hole anymore. We need to know when to put them into a hole and then when we need to back off. Because I think we're getting caught up in really not getting what I would say heavy work done, good work done. So
I had a conversation with Steph Grubbs, and we had this whole discussion about what is load management. And right now in the industry, we're talking about load management as in cutting the intensities and the loads from our athletes. But load management should actually just be a thing of like either it goes down or it goes up. Up is also very important, because if your game is 90 minutes, but you've trained for 40 to 80, that's a half, right? So it's like, okay, how can I now make sure that my athletes can last longer? So the intensity is going to have to go up, because like they need. So I always look at time on feet. I always look at playing time as a big driving factors. So if my game lasts 80 to 90 minutes, I need them to last another half. I need 3 halves from them, because if it goes overtime, I need to keep them as sharp as they were in their first half. Like that's kind of how I look at conditioning and how long they can last. Now, the other caveat to that is like, okay, now I have benched players. If one of my starters gets injured, I need that benched player to play at the same level. So how much time on feet do I give them? How much intensity do I give them to make sure that they can still go out there and perform the same? And it kind of goes back to that discussion of after the game. I know not in all sports they're allowed to do this, and leagues and conferences, but after the game ends, my bench players have to do something. Like, if they've not played the same time as my starters, I need them to catch up.
Yeah, that's always the balancing act. And I don't know, is there a right or wrong way of doing this? I think we've had mixed success with this. I've worked with groups where those bench players, we've tried to do a training session after the game they haven't played in, which is mentally very, very tough. You're training all week. You've done the exact same work as the squad. You've not played. The players are eating in the change room, and then you're taking them out onto the pitch to do a session. Now, that doesn't work everywhere. We've had good success with that at Arsenal Women, when we've been allowed train at the stadium, the main stadium, or play at the stadium because we're allowed train afterwards. That doesn't happen at every stadium. Normally, you've only got 15 minutes of straight line running. That's all you're allowed to do. So then the day after becomes really important for us. The next day, when the squad are doing recovery, those starters have to do work. And it is mentally very hard. But that's where a good coach and good performance staff working together can sell the idea. I've had players come up to me going, you're punishing me. You know, I've been 6 days on the bounce now you're asking me to do a session again. And I go, well, yesterday, unfortunately, you didn't play. You done the warm-up. You done 2K yesterday. So we don't see that as a session. I know it's the 7th day. And this day is on feet as well. And I've been guilty of it where coaches have berated me for talking about time on feet when they're going, okay, you're talking about time on feet here, Paudie, and I see our players in London walking around having a coffee on their day off. Is that time on feet? I'm going, okay, we need to be sensible here and understand what time on feet is. The same with days on feet. How, I've been to tournaments for 10 days in Dallas with our under-18s, and they've played 5 games in 10 days. And then I'm going back to our coaches going, oh, we can only do 5 sessions in 7 days. Like, it's all about balance. Yeah, I think there's no right or wrong answer there. I've had success with post-game training and next day training. But it really is dependent on your athlete and really getting buy-in from the player. And that's sitting with the coach and the player going, this is not punishment. This is making sure that when you have the opportunity to get your chance, you're ready. And that's very, very difficult. Very, very difficult. I've had a young boy in our academy. His first 2 years as an under-18 didn't play. Some days he arrives to the training ground to get on a bus to go away for a game. We can only take 18. He's part of the 22. For months and months and months, he was 4 boys left out for a year. And he was upset and he was pissed off. And I was just, okay, well, what can you control? You can control your physical training. You can control your technical training. And the coach was very good as well. He was saying, you're a good player. You're just not where we need you to be right now. And I got him in the gym and we done extra gym work, and we kind of made that his place where he felt he was moving forward. And then when he got the opportunity to play, he done really well in his second year, and that put him on the shop window for another club to come in and buy him for a lot of money. I could have pied him off and went, okay, he's just pissed off, young boy, he doesn't want to do it. But actually I sold it to him going, okay, what can you control here? You can control effort. Continue to put in the effort, and something will come from this. And it's the same as the post-game top-ups and the post-game training. How do you get 90 minutes of work into a player in 15 minutes? Well, that's always a debate. But I think it's the training throughout the week. I find with a big squad, Manny, if you've got a solid relationship with your head coach, and they can tell you, okay, this is likely to be my squad at the end of the week. if everyone's fit. Then you can start drip feeding more work into those that you know are not in the squad, subtly. But that's a very tricky one at every level.
I've never thought about it that way as well. That's brilliant. You can start drip feeding and making sure they've got extra stimulus in there.
It's difficult because then the player will go, well, why are you doing a bit extra with me here today? Often it'll be a young player who's in the squad and he or she knows they won't play for a couple of weeks, and they'll come up to you going, I want to do extra. And then it's a balancing act of doing enough but not making them tired that if they do get a chance through injury that they're not. It's a really strong balancing act. We tried to bucket them into groups. I tried to bucket my players into groups of the seasoned internationals who need maintenance, the top players who need development, and then the younger players who need a lot of development but also need consistency in their stimulus. Whether they're going to play every week or not, these girls or these boys need this amount of work each week. I think that's how you bucket your players.
I think something that you're constantly touching on, and I kind of wanted to get your take on it. What's your sort of view and development of athletes' education and the right things that they should look for in their program, and how to also develop themselves even though they might not have the same level of coaching from club to club?
Yeah, with any program, it's not about just putting something together and getting it to your athlete and going, okay, you do this and you get better, trust me. I always talk about buy-in from your players and athletes, and any athlete I work with, when we're building the program, male or female, we will sit with them and go, okay, this is what I'm seeing from your screening and your testing or your profiling. This is what I think you need to develop, but from your game, your event, what do you feel, where do you feel you're weak, or where do you feel you could be better? And then you build from there and you try and find a middle ground. And all along, you'll always get questions, and it is about continually being consistent in your message to all your players. Like, some athletes will go, okay, why the hell are we doing this, Paudie? I don't believe this benefits me. And I go, well, trust me, from what I'm looking at right now, it's benefited you. Or maybe, okay, you don't like this, let's change it. How can we attack this movement pattern in a different way that you're going to adhere to and apply yourself to? And I think that's how I approach that kind of education and buy-in, that I believe this is what's the best for you, but I need to get feedback from you. One, do you like it? And obviously athletes and as humans, we have to do things we don't like to get better. It's like taking medicine when you're sick. No one wants to do it, but sometimes you have to. So I think it's the balance, particularly with seasoned athletes, when you have them for really intense tournament type settings. Like, okay, what do you need? What do you like doing? And how can we meet in the middle? Because my background is this, and I believe this is what's best for you, but it's your body and it's how you feel. So how can we meet in the middle? I get what I believe is best for you and know will work for you, while you are also getting buy-in to your program because you're being given the opportunity to work on something in a way you are stimulated by that. It's not always the word like, it's stimulated. How do you stimulate your athlete to... When I go back to this, particularly in Europe, when you're in the middle of winter and it's cold outside and it's dark, how do you stimulate the athlete to adhere to the program and get what they can from the program when they're tired, sore, cold? Psychologically, it's hard to get up in the mornings, and even though they're full-time athletes, they're human. Yeah.
No, 100%. And I always like this conversation because I've been very fortunate in the programs that I've been at, because there has always been a lead that is very educated, and they spend a lot of time educating their athletes on what to do, even if they're not there. One is autonomy on their own performance. They know what to do if we're not there. But if they change clubs or if anything happens and we're legit not there to help them and support them, do they know enough to carry themselves a program and still be able to get that progression in them? Which, again, with elite sports, when they are at the highest level, they might have to take that upon themselves. Like, can we still get them to do this? It's very fascinating to me because, again, we're not always mandatory, but if a player has a strength and conditioning coach, it does make a difference.
Yeah, if you can be present, that is important to subtly change and subtly cue and change the tone and set the tone. But I completely agree with you there. Athletes need autonomy as well, and their body is their business. Like, it's their body. And I've heard that term coined by top NFL athletes, top trainers. I've heard that many times across A young guy used it in an interview, one of my rugby players, going, my body's my business, so I need to work on this. And I find the more autonomy you give and buy-in with the program, you're not creating robots, but you're creating, as you say, autonomy, but you're also creating that relationship for their development. So the athlete knows, okay, Paudie's not going to be in the gym for the next 10 minutes. I'm doing my individual prep. So we assign all our players individual prep, individual warm-ups. By the way, I'm not supervising foam rolling and stretching. I'm not doing that. I see so many good coaches spend so much time supervising foam rolling and stretching before they ever get into the actual meat of whether it's a prep session or a gym session. It's show them a few times, give them examples, off you go. Recommend. If you haven't got an athlete who can do some work on a roller, work on a bike, do some soft tissue work, and then get ready for your prep session, where you can give key coaching cues, key movement patterns, key neurological stimulation / switch on, then you've got autonomy. I could go into the gym. I was in a good place with our male and female players that I could go into the gym for whatever reason. If I was not in there when they started, which is very rare, might be a session started early or I was late from whatever, or I was covering a member of staff or something, and you see them cracking on and starting and going through their sessions with intent. That's how it should be. Because we're not always there. As you say, we're not always there. It's what they do in their off season. It's what they do at the weekend. We can't determine that. So once you're giving them the skill, you want to give them the skills to be able to take ownership of their physical development.
I've heard this a couple of times, but I do believe it. Session starts at 7, 20 past you're early, 22 you're early, 1:45 you're on time, 7 you're late.
Yeah, that would be a strong mantra of mine. Not just for my work, for my life. That's not getting all sentimental now, but I was brought up to believe if you're not there 10 minutes before work starts, you're late because you're not interested. Some people would disagree with that. Some people say, well, my work is between 7 and 8 and I turn up at 7. I think if you're trying to turn up at 7, then you're somewhere in your psyche, you're somewhere where you are, you're chasing the clock. And your priority isn't the session then. Your priority is not the session. Your priority is just getting it done, in my eyes. Now, some athletes might tell me I'm a maniac, and that's not the case. I worked with a very good rugby coach who was a top professional in the Munster Academy, and his thing was, if you're 10 minutes early, you're 15 minutes too late. Now, that was the extreme side of things. If you're not in there ready for us to go, let's go. I hate being late. I hate being on time for a session. I absolutely hate it as a coach. I'm thrown off straight away. So if your athlete is just coming in the door when you're starting, they've got their timings wrong or they're not interested. And from my experience, not interested.
Yep. I've had that. I did a speaking engagement in Italy. And now Italians are notorious for being late, which I absolutely hate. So I at the start of the conference, I said, look, I like it when people are early. If I'm putting on a session, I'm usually an hour to half hour earlier so I can set up everything. So when you come in, everything's set. All that we need to do is warm up and go. So then I would like that respect back. So if I'm here earlier, all you can do is come in earlier too, and as soon as we're here we can start making bits and bobs so we can go. They quickly realized that I wasn't joking, because it got to the time and they were still not there. I just locked the doors. I was like, hey, I mean what I say and I say what I mean. So and there was a good session. I let them in eventually. And I'm like, look, I am being deadly serious. If I'm taking my time out to give this to you, I would. It's respectful as well, in my opinion.
Yeah, I early on in my career I was very, very strong on that, and I still have some of the rugby player boys that I took and girls I took at the university job I had. And we were training 7 a.m. in the morning. Some of these guys were full-time students, maybe working in a nightclub at night to earn some money as a doorman. 7:30, if you're not in the gym by 7:30, the door is locked. You can have it out with the person paying your scholarship. I'm not dealing with you. Quickly filtered around and became a thing. And then I was like, am I Sergeant Major here? Is this the wrong way? And I then started going, no, okay, we're driving discipline here. I would rather the boy message me going, I didn't get in till 4 a.m, Paudie. I've been working until 4 a.m. I'm going to be a bag of shit tomorrow in the gym. I really want to come, but is there an alternative? Then I might go, okay, can you do your session later in the evening? I'll give you your session. That for me is a better compromise. I found then in other settings, it wasn't always the athlete's fault for being late. And a lot of time other staff don't respect your sessions, depending on certain sports. Or a meeting has ran over The squad are meant to be in for you at 10 to 12 for a half 12 start on the pitch. They come in at 12 because they ran over in a team meeting. They will say the team meeting was more important, the tactics are more important. So that's then when you have a conversation with the other staff going, okay, like I've been here set up since 9 o'clock this morning. I've got 10 minutes work out of 30 minutes done. That's fine, but over time, if that starts creeping in, your athletes are going to break down. They're not going to be ready for training.
I will say my example was on want-to-be strength and conditioning coaches. Yeah.
The coaches were late.
So, yeah, the coaches were late. So I was not having that.
I have had a few times of that when I've had people come in to shadow me and they've turned up late and not turned up at all and come in and sit on a box in the gym just watching things. Happy to say they had come into your session but actually not get anything out of it.
Yeah. So I mentored under Ron McKeefery at the University of Washington.
Well. Yeah. Tops.
He's unreal. He's like, we still message each other back and forward almost weekly, monthly. And he has this very strict rule. You're not allowed to sit during my sessions. Like if he catches you anywhere near a stool or a box heading to sit down, you're like, just go. You're not being here.
What are you doing? Yeah.
But no, it's like, it's very interesting, like how they want to be here. But again, I think intent is very important. Like the way you come into the session tells me a great deal about you as a coach. So, I mean, I've heard coaches say, like, I'll limit the amount of information I give them depending on how they walk in. And it's like, to a certain extent, I get it, because if you're pouring all of it out to them and they're like, yeah, I'm going to forget that in the next couple of seconds. It's like, is that a good spend of your time?
Yeah. Yeah, it's a very difficult, it can be a very tough job sometimes. Very stimulating, but very tough in lots of ways. And I think young practitioners need to remember this as well. And I had this with someone I'm mentoring at the moment, and I'm saying you have to enjoy the process. Don't worry about the destination. They want to work at the top level in elite sport, and they're on that ladder. But I'm like, you have to enjoy the destination. Build your habits now. Build your values now as a coach. And then that carries into, and I always say this to anyone who wants to get into the field, just go and coach. Take your son's under 8 warm up for free. Work with the local teenagers in the gym. Do whatever you need to do to coach, because you learn so much from coaching. As we mentioned, tone, turning up, being set up, having a plan A, having a plan B, depending on what comes in the door in front of you. How much information do you give today? Also, your demeanour as a coach. We are told as coaches, you can't have a bad day. You need to go in and be the person, the sounding board in the gym. There's days I've had a bad day and I've walked in and the players have seen it written all over my face. Now, they won't see that very often, but then this is where they understand, okay, you're human, you're having a bad day. But how do you still get the most out of that session? And also as coaches, we can sometimes have a couple of athletes within our group who really test us all the time. And you let them distract you from the group. So I learned that very quickly, that I had players come up to me going, Paul, you're always saying my name in the gym. You're always like, I could be at one end of the gym in a big gym and going, okay, come on, Manny, I want to see a bit more from you. And I said, the day you don't hear me saying your name, that's when you should be worried. It's because you're not listening to me. I've given up trying to coach you here. You're on your own. And that was really resonated with my group, that I like to drive a nice, fun, driven, stimulated culture within the gym, encouraging each other. I know those players I'm not going to be, not even shouting at. I know those players I'm not going to be saying, yeah, good job, well done. I don't just say that either. Please don't give false praise either. Athletes see straight through that. Oh, great lift, and it's a horrible lift with too much weight. That's a slippery slope. Give guidance, encouragement when it's good. Give praise when it's due, and give criticism when it's due in the same tone. So that was one of my things early on, that if you don't hear me encouraging you or coaching you or calling your name, I've given up on you for that moment. Not entirely, but for that time and that moment, that week, you haven't earned the right to be coached.
100%. So that you've actually just covered what usually is my last question. It's advice for young coaches. But onto something that you've just said is, I can't remember who said it, but I had a coach on and he said, make your starting role the elite level, the big badge that you're chasing. It doesn't matter if it's like the lowest levels. For you, that time, that period, it was Donny Mabe. Donny Mabe said this. It was like, whatever badge you have on your chest is that most important badge. It's the highest level competition that you can coach at that present moment, and that will trickle on. And he's the director of Texas Longhorns. It's like, He's at the top.
I think that's a brilliant statement. And that's what I mean by coaching. Just coach. In my time just at Arsenal alone, on this side of I've been an interviewer interviewing people for positions, maybe 250 people across 10 years for different positions in the men's and women's game, a strength and conditioning coach, sports scientist, whatever that position, nutritionist, whatever that position was. My first question is, at the end of an interview, they might show great technical proficiency, great education. I go, why do you want to work at this club? One big thing for me is if they say I'm a fan, I'm a super fan, that's a red flag. And I'm not, because then, not always, but for me it's like, okay, you're a super fan of the club, so you have a real passion for the club. I love that. But I don't want you getting caught up in what the club is about and what players you're training. You're going to be working with my under 14 boys for the next 2 seasons. I want them to be your focus. And that is the thing as well. My advice to young athletes, young practitioners is get experience coaching. It won't always be paid. Just coach a variety of sports, warm-ups, cool-downs. You might have a keen interest in strength, but get used to being on the pitch, get used to doing mobility. Do what you can, because it's so important when you're going into an interview that you have that broad skill set. But also, if you're applying for a job with an under 14 or an under 16 group, boys group for instance, be aware and work around getting that job for that group and understand that's the group you're working with. I will often get asked in interviews, okay, well, I'm going to be working with under 16 boys. Will I have access to the men's team? My answer will be no. Maybe. No, you're here to do this job. Or I've often got men who've got no experience in women's sport, or females who've got no experience in female sport. Well, why do you want to work with the women's team? And I could have been part of that when I was interviewed for it. It's just tell the truth on your CV, first of all, because a lot of people don't check references, interestingly enough. And the industry is small, so that often we will do our homework and check around that you've done what you've said you've done. And I don't care what that is. You mightn't have any experience, but in an interview you show me huge enthusiasm and passion for that group you're working with. Brilliant. I'm sold. Because ultimately, if you're not interested in that group or that position, we're all ambitious and we all want our staff to be ambitious. I want to develop staff that will want to be better than me or take my position, or, you want that. But you want to make sure that that person is keen on doing the job they've applied for. And that's often not the case. So going back to what you just said, the badge you're wearing now is the biggest badge you're wearing. And that's some of the best practitioners I know work with smaller clubs, or what we deem to be lesser level sports or lower level sports. Some of the happiest practitioners, friends of mine, don't want to progress in the club to a higher level or in their sport at a higher level because they really like working with the group they have. I think that's hugely admirable and commendable. And I've worked at every level, male and female, across loads of different sports. And to this day, I think anyone that has worked with me or knows me, player or athlete, will tell you that it doesn't care who's in front of me, I will coach them. If I'm responsible for them, if it's the 13-year-old young footballer or the top international female captain, it doesn't matter. I'm treating you the same. And I think you'll go a long way in your career if you have that mindset.
100%. So I always look at the different fields in this industry, and again, I am aware that I'm a little bit psychotic when it comes to my thirst for knowledge. So I've worked as sports science, I've worked as video analysis, I've worked as S&C coaches, I've coached sport coaching as well. For me, it's always what can also make me different to someone else. So I mentioned the AI thing earlier, but when I was at university, I worked my whole way through it in a public gym, and then just doing different types of internships. One of my lecturers put me forward for video analysis for Dundee Rugby, and in the interview I was like, okay, so you're doing strength and conditioning, but why do you want to do video analysis? Why is that your thing just now? And I took a second to think about okay, how can I answer this in a way that makes sense? But if we think about biomechanics and human performance and movement, what are we doing? We're watching it back. In our heads, we'll see it, but we'll analyze it at the same time. So I was okay, so video analysis will also enhance my ability to determine what's good and what's bad. So by watching film, I can correlate that to human performance. So I can see what people need to do to be better. And they got to the point where, now this was an internship, so I really wasn't paid. But it got 3 months into the job, and they were like, man, you're doing a good job. You're having to travel a fair bit to get here. Let me pay for petrol so that you can be here and you can at least take one stressor off. And that, for me, that was okay, they believe in me enough. A job that I've got no business on doing. It was just experience. But they were like, you're doing a good enough job. And I had to hold meetings in front of like board members, coaches, players. Like I had a whole host of responsibilities that I just took on. Like you're doing a really good job. Here's a little kick just to make sure you're comfortable.
That's very forthcoming and progressive from that club. And I love your answer, by the way, in that interview. Analysis is assessment of a skill, same as assessment of... We're assessing skills every day in the gym or on the pitch.
Mm-hmm.
So the crossover is very strong, and obviously you showed a huge thirst and willingness to learn and delve into that as a new skill set, and that's an incredible skill set to have. That's a really interesting story, and commendable that they saw the value in it as well.
No, it was really interesting, and I think like when you're learning, you should seek out all these different opportunities. I have this saying that I got from one of my coaches. She's when I was in the Scottish development training, and it's shy boys don't get sweets. So like in anything you do, if an opportunity comes up, shy boys don't get sweets. You take that and you have to make do with what comes from it.
I have one story to leave you on this. The very early start of my career, I was studying in university, sports and leisure management. Off the back of that, we were learning gym instruction qualifications, aerobic instruction, exercise to music qualifications. I wasn't very good at aerobics. I was good at the gym side of stuff, the programming, but we were going to be assessed in both at the end of term, at the end of our first year. So I was brave and went to the university aerobics class, which was 50 women in a sports hall, me and one of my mates, and we done it for weeks on end just to see how the class is set up, how it's structured, etc., etc. I got to know the aerobics instruction teacher because she was told, some students might be on their way. So there was girls from my class, but also me, one of the only males in the whole thing. She saw something because I used to pick her brains on warm-ups, cool-downs, tempo for tapes and CDs. And one day she turned to me and went, okay, Paudie, I'm giving you an opportunity here. I'm not available to take the class next week. They can't find anyone to take the class. Can you take the class? Now, I wasn't qualified at the time. I had done a handful of classes. My first experience as a coach was 50 females in front of me following my cues and my steps in an aerobics class for an hour. That was one of the most daunting things I've ever done in my life. But
Paudie, nice. I'm picturing you bright green headband, neon, tube socks, and the steps.
She's a maniac being played in the background.
Thriller comes on after.
And subsequently, off the back of that, Manny, it was an opportunity she gave me. Turns out then that year when I got qualified, that instructor left to go full-time doing something else. I took over that class. That became my earner. That became my earner on a Monday night for a whole year. And off the back of that, circuit classes came on board. There was different... The people hiring me and the teachers who were teaching me said, okay, he's okay at this. And then I ended up doing circuit classes for the lecturers on a Wednesday at lunchtime. An opportunity arose. I was ready. I took the chance. So this is the person who has worked at elite sport for 25 years. I was the strength power guy in the rugby setting because I was a weightlifter. But my first outlet was aerobics and circuit type exercise to music classes. Coaching. Just learn to take rhythm, timing, setup. I tell you, if your setup is wrong and there's 50 people in front of you and you get one step wrong, it's very hard to come back from that.
100%. So I actually had a similar start to you when I was in public gyms and I was taking spins, I was taking kettlebells classes and all that stuff. And so you won't, I mean, I've told this story before, but what people don't realize, I've got dyslexia, and with that I get a stutter. So like when there's a lot of pressure on me, I developed this stutter, and I had it up until I took my first spin class, where it was about 15 people in front of me, and all their eyes were on me, and I was like, well, it's a fucking sink or swim. And that since then, that sort of got me out of the stutter, and like it's just I feel a bit more fucking strength and conditioning coach. I have to speak in front of people and present, so like I've never stuttered since. And it was like that thing of like being exposed to this really hard thing where everyone's eyes were on me and I can't mess up as easy, sort of snapped me out of this thing I'd been living with for years.
That's commendable. And sometimes you have to walk into the fire, don't you?
Or sprint.
Be brave. Or sprint. Run through the fire.
Paudie, I really appreciate you for coming on. I genuinely had a blast.
Thank you for having me, and to the listeners, I've probably ranted here. It's been a lovely conversation, and I could talk for hours here, but yeah, thank you for listening, and thank you for having me on, and just give me the opportunity to share loads of mad ideas here.
Yeah, no. If you want to direct people to where they can find you, reach out and send you a message.
Yeah, so I'm on Instagram at coach.roach or paudie.roche, and you can also get me on Twitter on coach_roach_. Generally, I'm on there, and hopefully in the near future we'll be launching my own website, so watch this space.
Nice. I would love to have you back if you want to
Anytime.
talk a bit more on that. Appreciate you, Paudie. Peace.